nerdy Heli-Stimmer.
Welcome to another short hop on the Vatsim Network. Today we've loaded up the Venerable Bell UH-1 Huey by Nimbus Simulations. And we've picked the livery from the 1990s movie Air America, which you can read on the tail boom. Our flight will be from Mulhouse Airport or Basel, Lima Foxtrot Sierra Bravo to Zurich International Lima Sierra Zulu Hotel. First checking the load status of the battery, switch the voltmeter switch on the overhead panel to BAT and look for 24 volts. Quickly switching back the voltmeter to show us the voltage of the essential bus and then switching on the battery. Now we hear the low RPM warning horn, which we can mute on the pedestal panel. If you remember my video on how to start up a helicopter as part of the series on how to fly a helicopter in a sim, some of this might be familiar to you. As I check the fire caution light as well as the main caution light panel, of course we will compare the Nimbus Simulation rendition of the UH-1 to Belsimteks UH-1 from DCS. Hydraulics and force trim to on and check that the chip detector is in the bolt position. A chip detector is a magnet that attracts ferrous particles in the lubrication system of a helicopter, which can be an indication of wear and impending failure of important components of the aircraft. So if the engine chip light should come on the caution panel, it's time to land and call for maintenance. The interiors of Nimbus UH-1 looks very terrific. You can see the wear and tear, the used look of the panels, just as I imagine a vintage aircraft would look like. Anti-collision light to on. The circuit breakers on the overhead panel are inoperable, so that's the first major difference to Belsimteks Huey, which has simulated all the circuit breakers. Fuel pumps on and make sure the rotor brake is disengaged. Here is one plus of Nimbus's UH-1. It actually has a rotor brake. The DCS version does not have one. And also the way the rotors are animated looks much more like the real thing. You can see that it sort of slants or tips over to one side, which is typical of the old UH-1s. Another nice detail or eye candy is how the lights on the caution panel dim out as I depress the starter due to the additional load on the battery on startup. Keep the starter depressed until the gas producer is at 40% or 40 seconds have passed, whichever comes first. Now starts the shaking. It might be a little bit overdone, however a very nice detail as well. Now we hear the swooshing sound of the larger blades as they spool up. Doesn't sound very realistic for my taste, a little bit overdone. In general I'd say that Belsimteks UH-1 in DCS has the more convincing sound set. However, the sound is not bad. There are also these kind of details, the occasional flap as the aircraft rocks from side to side. Now there's still one major issue with Nimbus's Huey. If you want to fly on Vatsim or Avio or Pilot Edge or whatever, you'll notice that Mode Charlie or altitude reporting is not operable. They promised a quick fix after the release of the civilian version of the UH-1, however, to my knowledge, until today nothing has happened. So today we'll fly without Mode Charlie active. I put it in the remarks section of my flight plan. Switching on the transponder anyway, it's the norm position. And I think it's the switch labeled M/A, which would activate altitude reporting on the real aircraft. Now these instruments, the radios and the transponder, they are really old. It's the same kind of instruments that you will find in Belsimteks Huey. I think they probably have included a more modern radio stack in the civilian version. Haven't checked that one out yet. Switching on our main inverter for AC power supply. So Mulhouse Airport is actually an airport that is shared by two bordering cities, Mulhouse in France and Basel in Switzerland. So if you're looking for charts for this airport, you'll find them in the French AIP, not in the Swiss AIP. Also, the first two letters of the airport code show LF for Basel, which is the French country code, and LS, or Lima Sierra, for Zurich. Now I had to fiddle around on the audio panel a little bit to be able to hear the radios. Audio for our VHF radios, very high frequency, should be set to on.
This is Bail Information Bravo. Runway 15 and use ILS approach.
It's channel number 3.
Weather report. Met report bow at time 1730 Zulu. UTC. Wind 350 degrees 5 knots. Cav OK. Temperature 16. 2.1 QNH 1009. Nozick. Advise on initial contact. You have information Bravo. Report aircraft type on initial contact with Bale arrival. Since Bale information Bravo. Runway 15 and use ILS approach. Transition level 85 automatic weather report. Met report bow at time 1730 Zulu. UTC. Wind 350 degrees 5 knots. Cav OK. Temperature 16. 2.1 QNH 1009. Nozick. Advise on initial contact. You have information Bravo. Report aircraft type on initial contact with Bale arrival.
1009 hectopascals equals 2980 inches of mercury.
Bale information Bravo. Runway 15 and use ILS approach. Transition level 85 automatic weather report. Met report back.
Now I'm rolling on the throttle, getting the aircraft from the ground idle to the flight idle mode. VFR procedures at Basel rely on several visual reporting points. We will fly to Echo first and then to Sierra, which is dubbed the Route 2. Startup procedure for the Nimbus Bell UH-1 naturally is pretty close to the startup procedure of Belsimteks UH-1 and DCS. In Belsimteks version you will have to set the throttle to a realistic startup position, which is just a tad bit below the idle release stop. That's not simulated in this version. However, I like the flickering of the caution panel lights on startup. Also, the interior design of Nimbus's Huey is more fancy. First VRP or visual reporting point of the Zurich CTR or control zone is Whiskey at 3,500 feet maximum altitude. Then we'll proceed to Whiskey 1, also at 3,500 max, and then on to Whiskey 2 at 3,000 feet, just a few miles west of the airport. We're gonna land at the heliport on the Whiskey apron, which is west of all the runways at Zurich, so I don't expect to enter any traffic pattern. We'll probably shoot straight for the final approach and takeoff area. So flight route is programmed. We are ready to go. Just a few final steps. Gonna activate our position lights as we leave the airport, switching all our lights to on. And we'll set the generator that we used for startup into the standby position. It now functions as a backup for our main generator. We'll contact tower right away, stating our aircraft registration, our aircraft type, our present position, our weather information, and our intentions. I made a mistake on my initial call asking for a northeast departure. Of course, Zurich is due southeast.
Cool, wind 350 degrees 5 knots, runway 15, clear for takeoff. Clear for takeoff, runway 15, Leipzig 255.
Basel Tower, Helikopter Delta Hotel, Echo Lima, Mike und Amt.
Delta Lima Mike, Basel Tower, good evening.
Delta Lima Mike, Bell UH-1 at Gagba 1 with information Bravo, 5 POB northeast departure via Route 2 VFR. Of course we could just leave the CTR via Route Sierra and then turn to the northeast, however that's not what I wanted.
Delta Lima Mike, I'll leave CTR via Route 2, report 0. And are you ready for liftoff?
We're ready for liftoff. Report Sierra and exit via Route 2, Delta Lima Mike.
Heli Delta Lima Mike. Wind 350 degrees 5 knots. Depart at our discretion and report Sierra.
Departing our discretion and Sierra Delta Lima Mike. So no taxiing and no need to use the runway. We're going to do a pedal turn and depart to the east. Picking up the aircraft, it is rather forgiving, as a UH-1 should be. You can see my control inputs on the lower right hand corner in this video. aircraft response to control inputs is rather sluggish and delayed, which can be expected of a large two-bladed teetering rotor system, so you need to be a little bit ahead of what the aircraft is doing, and you also see that I'm handling the cyclic quite aggressively from time to time. This is a major difference to Belsimteks flight model, which is rather responsive to cyclic control inputs. The flight dynamics of the Nimbus Huey have changed quite a bit from initial release to a version 1.5, which we are flying now. The first release did not make use of the experimental flight model of X-Plane, and it was more responsive, much closer to Belsimteks UH-1. I really liked that flight model. It felt a little bit more dynamic as the DCS version. However, version 1.5 sees the flight dynamics numbed down a little bit, which might as well be accurate. Judging from videos of the real aircraft, you can see pilots handle the cyclic rather roughly from time to time, whereas in the DCS versions my cyclic inputs are very small. Additionally, I always felt that Belsimteks version was a little bit too responsive on the lateral axis or the roll axis. That's something that I don't see in the real aircraft. So who's right? Who knows? It's probably somewhere in the middle. However, I do like Nimbus's rendition. It feels like a sturdy aircraft, not like a light type of helicopter. You really need to tell it where to go. We're headed for visual reporting point Echo, which is at the southernmost tip of an island in the River Rhine. Blade slap sound is quite convincing, and we also see the aircraft vibrating quite a lot in flight. So on revisiting this aircraft, I actually take a liking to that new flight model. Now, every now and then you would need a little bit of right pedal in the UH-1. I have the feeling that the aircraft shears a little bit to the right, so I feel the need to push in a little bit of right pedal. However, the slip ball doesn't show me that. Now, the aircraft requires hands-on flying, even in cruise, so you need to constantly adjust to maintain your course and your altitude. The Nimbus Huey is one of the more pricey helicopters on the X-Plane store, and the civilian version was released as a separate download, which gives you some additional features such as a firefighting and sling loading mode. However, the price tag is the same, so roughly 40 euros. Even though you do get a discount if you pre-own the military version, you would still need to pay 65 euros in total for both versions. Now, for that amount of money, I really do feel that they should fix the transponder issue for online flying. Now, the indicated airspeed of 110 knots is quite optimistic for a UH-1. Normal cruise speed would be around 90 to 95 knots. But maybe I'm pulling too much collective here. But exhaust gas temperature is within the limits, I believe. You do get a nice set of in-flight menus. There is, of course, the controls indicator on the lower right-hand side of the screen, so no need to use an additional one via a plug-in, as I normally do. There is a weight and balance menu in which you can set your cargo and fuel status. You can also position passengers within the aircraft that actually show. Another menu gives you the option to manage your door configuration. And there's a maintenance menu which shows you the wear and tear of the aircraft. So you would be responsible to check for fluids and wear and tear of different components of the helicopter. You can always check the always as new option if you do not want to bother. After leaving the CTR of Basel at waypoint Sierra, I will fast forward until my initial call to Zurich Tower. Approaching the visual reporting point of Sierra, and as the name suggests, we need to report reaching that waypoint and state our altitude.
Delta Lima, Mike, you are leaving my airspace. Monitor Unicom 1 to decimal 8. Have a nice flight. Bye bye.
Over Unicom, thank you, Delta Lima Mike. Even though in this case the controller contacted us first, it is our responsibility as VFR pilots to report reaching visual reporting points. Welcome back. In the meantime, I listen in on Zurich ATC, so the weather information for Zurich Airport. It's Kilo. QNH has not changed. It's still at 1009 hectopascals or 2980 inches of mercury. For my approach into Zurich Airport, I will call Zurich Tower. So no need to contact Zurich arrival or approach since we are flying below the controlled airspace. On my initial call to Zurich Tower, I will use my full call sign, advise on my aircraft type, my position, the weather information that I have, which is Kilo, and my intentions. I want to land at the West Heliport.
Zurich Tower, hello again. This is 404 Alpha with you at Holy Point Juliet, requesting crossing 28. This is 404 Alpha, welcome back, stand by, break. Top Swiss 83 Golf Romeo, contact Zurich arrival 130.55. Have a nice flight, bye bye.
130.55, thanks to the ATC, always, bye bye, also 68 confirmed.
This is 404 Alpha on Juliet, cross runway 28. Juliet cross 28, this is 404 Alpha, thank you.
Zurich Tower, helicopter Delta Hotel Echo Lima Mike. Bell UH-1 is 12 miles west whiskey at 3200 with Kilo for landing heliport west.
Delta Hotel Echo Lima Mike, Zurich Tower, hello, please set scope mode Charlie, I call back shortly.
Had to happen.
With 4 Alpha, contact Zurich apron 121.75. Contact the apron 121.75, thank you, sis, what's it about?
Zurich Tower, 455 with you,
Lot 455, Zurich Tower, hello, the wind 350 degrees, 5 knots, runway 28, clear for takeoff.
28, clear for takeoff.
Delta Hotel Echo Lima Mike. I put it in the remarks section. The payware aircraft that we fly cannot operate under mode Charlie.
Right.
2 stations, please say again for Delta Lima Mike.
Delta Lima Mike. I put it in the remarks section. The payware aircraft that I'm flying cannot operate mode Charlie, unfortunately.
Delta Lima Mike, that's copied. In that case, enter controls on via route Whiskey. Next, report Whiskey 1 and expect QNH 1009 with information Kilo.
1009 and enter CTR via Whiskey, report Whiskey 1. Delta Lima Mike.
Hello. Delta 4242, the wind 350 degrees, 5 knots, runway 28, cleared for takeoff.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 28, Delta 442, danke und annehmen wir Besprechung.
Delta Lima Mike, please report your altitude.
Altitude is 3,100, Delta Lima Mike.
Delta Lima Mike.
Since we cannot operate our transponder in mode Charlie, so no altitude reporting for ATC, Tower just asked us to report on our indicated altitude.
And Delta Lima Mike, any preferred landing spot for you?
I would like to land at the heliport west, Delta Lima Mike.
Delta Lima Mike, heliport west is copied.
So in real life, if mode Charlie is required within controlled airspace or at airports, ATC just might not give you clearance to fly there. However, on the Vatsim network, it doesn't really matter. I think the software that these controllers use shows them your altitude independently of what your transponder is set to. Delta Lima Mike, Whiskey 1 at 3,200.
Lufthansa, correction, Delta Lima Mike, proceed direct to Whiskey 2 and expect landing at helipad west.
Direct Whiskey 2 and helipad west, Delta Lima Mike.
November Lima, VFR to Basel, helipad Warrior, at Papa 1, ready for departure, outbound route Whiskey.
Hotel Bravo, Papa November Lima, Zurich Tower, hello, you're number 3 for departure, I will call you back.
Number 3, Hotel Bravo, Papa November Lima.
There is 6 for Delta, the wind 35, actually disregard, stand by for 1 minute.
That little lake up ahead is Whiskey 2.
Zurich Tower, traffic, Swiss 971 holding short, runway 28. Swiss 971, Zurich Tower, guten Abend, stand by.
Standing by, Swiss 971 and Roma.
Delta Lima White, Whiskey 2, 3000.
Delta Lima Whiskey, roger, the wind 350 degrees, 5 knots, helipad west, cleared to land.
Clear to land, helipad west, Delta Lima Mike.
Delta Lima Mike, there is an Airbus 320 currently taking off on the runway 28, should not be any factor to you.
Traffic inside, maintain visual, Delta Lima Mike. I shortened that a little bit, that means I maintain visual separation to the traffic that I have in sight.
Swiss 971 on Juliet cross runway 28, contact apron 121.75, schönen Abend.
Cross on the 28 on Juliet is approved on the other side, 12175, Swiss 971 Charlie.
Delta Lima Mike, there is another departure in 30 seconds. Lufthansa 4 Yankee Alpha, the wind 350 degrees, 5 knots, runway 28, cleared for takeoff. Cleared for takeoff. 4 Yankee Alpha. This 64 Delta contact Zurich arrival 130.55, ensure flight bye-bye. 130.55.
Zurich Tower, good evening, Alpine 2 Whiskey Bravo Juliet, short of 28.
Alpine 2 Whiskey Bravo Zurich Tower, hello. Hotel November Lima, Person Hotel November Lima, line up runway 28 and wait.
Line up and wait, 28 Hotel November Lima.
To sum it up, Nimbus Huey compared to Belsimteks Huey. I think the flight model in most parts is quite convincing. It's not as sensitive to cyclic control inputs, especially on the roll axis, which I find to be a little bit exaggerated in the Belsimteks version. Visually, it is very appealing. The panel has more detail than DCS's version. The sound, I'd say, is better in DCS.
Alpine 2 Whiskey Bravo, expect crossing in about 2 minutes. There is traffic on the other side of the runway.
Problem with standing by at Juliet, Alpine 2 Whiskey Bravo, thank you.
Wilson's 4 Yankee Alpha, contact Zurich arrival 130.55, ensure flight bye-bye.
Contact Zurich arrival on 130.55, Lufthansa 4 Yankee Alpha, danke bitte.
Alright, as you can see, I screwed up the approach. I stopped quite a bit short of the FATO, the final approach and takeoff area, Hotel 01. You can see it up ahead. I thought it would take a little bit longer to decel.
Delta Lima Mike, please report on ground.
Delta Lima Mike. Now, one major downside of the Nimbus Huey is the issue with the transponder. It is on the rather expensive side of X-Plane add-ons, and if you want to make use of the sling loading firefighting features, you would have to choose the civilian version over the military version.
Zurich Tower, Swiss 78 November, holding short 28 Juliet.
Swiss 78 November, Zurich Tower, hello, standby.
It would have been nice if they had actually simulated the circuit breakers, however that's not a big problem. Even though it is a lot of fun to fly this vintage UH-1, I don't pull it out of my virtual hangar that often. It's probably because I'm a little bit fed up with flying a Huey, since I've been doing that extensively on DCS.
Hotel November Lima, leave the controls on my route Whiskey, next report Whiskey 2, the wind 360 degrees, 5 knots, runway 28, cleared for takeoff.
Cleared for takeoff, 28, next report, Whiskey 2, Hotel November Lima.
Delta Lima Mike on the ground, thanks for service.
Delta Lima Mike, vielen Dank fürs Fliegen, schönen Abend, bis zum nächsten Mal, tschüss.
So we see translating tendency actually is modeled, so the aircraft hangs a little bit left skid low, much more so than the DCS version. For shutdown, roll off the throttle to flight idle and wait for 2 minutes before shutting down the engines.
Alpine 2 Whiskey Bravo on Juliet, cross runway 28, turn right onto Alpha and contact apron 121.75.
Now cross 28 at Juliet, turn right on Alpha, contact ground 121.75, Alpine 2 Whiskey Bravo.
Swiss 78 November on Juliet, cross runway 28, thereafter contact apron 121.75.
Crossing 28 on Juliet and thereafter ground 121.75, thank you, Swiss 78.
Hotel November Lima, you may proceed direct to Whiskey and report Whiskey.
Direct to Whiskey, next report Whiskey, Hotel November Lima.
Tower, good evening, and 404
Standing name in 4042, Zurich Tower, hello, via Alpha, line up runway 28 and wait.
Via Alpha, line up runway 28 and wait, good evening, 4042.
Target is
195 you.
So that concludes our flight with Nimbus Simulations UH-1 in X-Plane. Feel free to let me know in the comments which rendition of the iconic Huey you prefer, the Belsimteks version in DCS or this one in X-Plane. Thanks for joining in, and I hope to see you around next time. See ya!